Everyone, please listen, because our next speaker is about to speak. The next speaker of the evening has literally written the book on why gender is important in game design. Locally, she has worked at Origin Studios and Sony Online, and right now she works for Schell Games, which means she works for Jesse Schell, himself a participant in Microtalks out in GDC. This is Sheri Graner Ray.
Yeah, you're not that tall.
I'm not quite that tall. All right. So this may not work after all. Okay, so I was sitting there and I was really enjoying that last talk. Dan, that talk was really great, and I was thinking, man, I really feel sorry for everyone to follow that. Oh, crap. Okay, so I am Sheri Graner Ray. Here's all the crap I've done. I've been in the game industry since 1989. I started at Origin Systems. I've been a writer and a designer, primarily a designer for most of this time. I've worked everything as a designer up to head of product development. I'm currently the studio design director for Schell Games. Schell Games is headquartered in Pittsburgh. They opened an office here in Austin, but I handle the design for both studios. I did write Gender Inclusive Game Design, Expanding the Market. I'm a hardcore gamer. I'm at least a 20-hour-a-week gamer still, and that's the one that normally really surprises people because they all think that I look more like a soccer mom than a gamer. So, I want to talk a little bit about learning styles, because I think it's something that's really important to us when we're talking about how we're developing our games. Specifically when we're talking about developing tutorials. Tutorials are the on-ramps for our games. They're how people enter our games. That's how they come to learn and learn to enjoy our games. Without decent on-ramps to our games, people don't stick to our games, they don't stay playing our games, and we also shut doors on very large markets out there and keep people out of our games. So we're talking a little bit about learning styles. Now, everybody kind of knows some of the traditional learning styles out there. There's the audio learners, the oral learners. These are the people that take their information in by listening to things. They'd rather listen to somebody talk than read or see it in print anywhere. You usually can tell an audio learner, they're the person that says, that sounds about right to me. Say, that sounds right. There's the visual learners. These are the people who really do prefer to read their information. They prefer to see it written on a whiteboard. They prefer to have it actually in text, or where they can actually see it and take it in visually. They like charts and graphs and things that they can see that way. They'll say, they like to say things like, yeah, this looks right. We have our kinetic learners. Okay. Kinetic learners are not, there's a lot of misconception about kinetic learners. Kinetic learners, a lot of times people say, well, these are the people who like to learn by doing. No. These are the people who like to move or have some kind of action when they're learning something. It's not necessarily that they have to be doing what it is that they're doing. I actually officed for 3 years. I don't know how many of you know Sam Lewis. I officed for 3 years with Sam. Sam is a highly kinetic learner, and the more involved we would get in design discussions, the more he would bounce and dash up and down in front of the whiteboard, just bouncing in front of things. He was such a kinetic learner that he would sit at his computer when we weren't working together on a particular design aspect. We would sit at the computer and he would do this. So he'd be moving constantly, like moving the virtual ideas around in his head. So kinetic learners are movement learners. Okay. So these are your 3 basic styles. There's a lot of variations on this. A lot of your education people will tell you there's combinations and this stuff. So this is what we mostly hear about. There are some learning acquisition modes that we don't hear a lot about that are really important to us as game developers. There's 2 different ways that we take in or we acquire our learning. One is explorative and one is modeling. What does this mean? Let's talk a little bit about explorative learning. Explorative learning are people that learn by taking risks. They learn by exploring a situation and by taking risks and getting out there and trying it. Ultimately, these are the people who want to push every button, they want to flip every lever, they want to touch it, see it, what does it do, what happens when I do this, what happens when I do this. They're also what we would refer to as experiential. They want to experience everything that's possible that's out there. Okay, what's a good example of this? Think about a 14-year-old boy. Give him a token and send him into an arcade. What's the first thing he does? He walks up to the very first machine that's there, he throws his token in and he goes, how does this work? As he's hitting the levers and banging this. That's just the classic example of explorative learning. They get out there, they take the risks, they push the barriers, they push the buttons and levers. What does this do? How does this work? So explorative learning It's risk-taking learning. Learn it by taking these risks. It's experiential. They want to experience the things that they're doing. Interesting about this is a predominantly male learning style. Not exclusively, but this is a predominantly. We do have a sizable number of women who also learn in an explorative style, particularly if you're sitting in this room here tonight. If you're already in tech, you're probably, and you're female, you're probably an explorative learner because we do tend to skew our tech learning towards explorative. Okay, let's talk about modeling. Modeling learners want to understand the risks and ramifications before they attempt something. They want to know how it works first. Then, once they kind of understand that, or the way they learn to understand what the risks and ramifications are, is they want to model their behavior on something that they already see. So they want to repeat the action that they're already seeing happen. Thank you. So modeling learners want to be able to predict what's going to happen. They want to understand what's going to happen before they try it. A lot of times your modeling learners will be referred to as scared. How many of you have said, oh, my mom, she just won't touch that computer, she's scared of it. My girlfriend, she just won't touch this. My dad won't touch that my little, the PS3, he won't even hook it up. Why? Because he's afraid. It's very, very likely he or she is not afraid. It's very likely what you're dealing with is a modeling learner that doesn't understand what the risks and ramifications are when they push the button, when they turn it on, when they hit a control. They don't understand what's going to happen. So they're not about to do anything until they understand this. They're not afraid. They're simply not comfortable being forced to learn in an explorative manner. So let's go back to that arcade. So we got our 14-year-old boy. How does this work? And he's hitting all the buttons and it's all letters. What's his sister doing? She's standing behind him, holding her token in her hand, and she's watching. Why? She's trying to figure out how that game works before she puts her token in. She wants to understand what's happening. How many of you have had a sister, a mother, a brother even say, no, I don't want to play, I just want to watch you. Why? Because they're wanting to understand how it works before they put their token in, how it works before they turn that game on. They want to understand how it works. They're not afraid. They're not uncomfortable. They want to know how it works first. If we give them that opportunity to understand how it works before they try it, we make the on-ramp that much easier. So, modeling learners, they're projective. They want to know ahead of time, they want to project what is going to happen when I do this. They want to understand. They're imitative. They want to base what they do, base their behavior on what they've already seen happen, and verify that when I do that same thing, the same thing happens for me. This is predominantly, but not exclusively, a female learning pattern. Very important. Okay, why do we care? Why is this even at all important? Most games today are built on explorative learning patterns. Right? Got a classic for you. You recognize that? This is an absolutely classic example of an explorative learning situation. As all of y'all know, this WoW no longer has this tutorial. They changed it a little bit. So when you came into a situation where the developers thought you might have a question, they put a little exclamation point down at the bottom and they expected you to click on it. I've been playing this game, I've been playing WoW for about, I think 3 or 4 days, maybe. And I was frustrated. I could not figure out how to sell something to the stupid vendor. I did everything possible to try to get that vendor to take it. My inventory was full and I couldn't sell. So my husband walks in and he peeks over my shoulder and he says, "What's wrong?" I said, "I can't sell, I can't figure it out. Nothing will tell me how I'm supposed to sell." And he says, "Well, why didn't you click on those?" I said, "Because no one told me to." I didn't know. No one said click on those things there. And so I didn't. Modeling learners are not going to simply go around and click on things just because to see what happens. They want to know what's going to happen first. And no one had told me, click on these things here for your help. And besides that, I was too busy watching a game and I didn't even know when they had come up. I didn't even realize the whole bottom bar was filled with these points. Right, it's not even a question mark, right? So, the deal with this is, if you leave out your modeling learners, you are missing a big part of your marketing. You're making it that much more difficult for that particular audience to access your game. And if they don't access your game, they don't spend their money. And frankly, I don't care what kind of a learner they are. I want their money. That's what keeps us all working in this really great industry. That's what I got. That's my name. That's my information.
Yes. And other gender-defying things that Sheri likes to do. Yeah,